until that adventure, until doing it with your group, um, no one else even read those. Like no one else even played or leveraged any of that, right? So and I accepted it because I'm realizing it gets a little bit more advanced when you get into those things. But yeah, it was such a treat.
Welcome to the Red Caps Podcast, a podcast where we dip our caps into the blood of our listeners and we ramble on about old school games. Today I sit down with Rui Albino, a storyboard artist with Ubisoft and a tabletop designer whose game Seas of Infinity I had the pleasure of trying out not too long ago at a local gaming convention. It was a very interesting chat, and I hope you guys enjoy listening to it. I had a really great time recording it. So as always, I hope you can sit back, listen, and enjoy. Ladies and gentlemen, I am joined by Rui, and we are going to be talking about a game that he is developing called Seas of Infinity, a game that I got the pleasure of trying out a few months ago. And Rui, thank you for coming onto the show.
Thank you for having me.
Before we get into the game, let's talk a little bit about your background, because there might be people may be unaware that they may already have seen some of your work in the past from your day job. So you, if I understand it correctly, have been doing storyboard concept art and storyboard art for companies like Ubisoft for a while in the video game space.
Yeah, so I guess we'll go backwards here. For the past 8 years, I'm working on 10 years because at Ubisoft you get your golden joystick year 10. so we'll see how things go then. But yeah, for the last 8 years and a bit, I've been the cinematic storyboard artist at Ubisoft Toronto. It's been a fantastic run. Before that, I spent decades in television mostly, but a little in feature as a storyboard artist. Also, I've been a layout artist, a designer, both character designer and location design and prop design. I think that kind of covers it. Minimal animation, not a lot of that. And then before all of that, I actually started my career way back in the 90s, working for ReadySoft. So that would be, remember the Dragon's Lair and Space Ace games?
The Laserdisc games? Or
Yes, yeah. So they ported those to home on the Commodore Amiga and the IBM computer of the day, and so I got to work on those and work at that studio for a few years. So I've been as far as my professional quote unquote career, it's always been entertainment, and it's 75% to 90% been storyboarding. Yeah.
What's the key difference, or is there a key difference between storyboarding for a video game versus a film or television?
Oh wow, yeah. So when I was doing film and TV, it was animation, whereas video games, because they primarily use motion capture or performance capture, it's like I'm storyboarding for live action feature. So there's a lot more understanding about the camera, the lens, and details like that, and leaving a little bit more to the talent. Whereas I can't help myself. Like I would act through my drawings. They don't necessarily require them in video games, because they're relying on the talent to bring their quality to the acting, right? Yeah, so that's probably the biggest difference.
I had a conversation ages ago with a gentleman called Runehammer. If you're familiar with the Index Card RPG or any of his games, and he worked in the past doing like concept art and art for various companies. I think it was probably more. I think there was some video game, there was some advertisement or something there. But he had mentioned in our conversation of how fast he would go through drawing. So he would be in a boardroom, and they would describe a vehicle or a setting or something, and it was about how fast he could get several different versions of that up on the whiteboard or up on the drawing tablet or what have you for them. Do you find that holds true as well, where speed is the key thing there, or is your work more of they've already finalized the concept and you're storyboarding out a longer draft of it, so to speak.
Yeah, so yeah, very, very little. Sometimes we'll do some concept work because they need it quick. Most concept artists are more of 3D bashers and photo bashers at Ubisoft. So they can take anywhere from 3 to 5 days to do a piece. As a storyboard artist, you're actually trying to hit all the beats and a rhythm and a tone. So basically, you're working in minutes. So 1 minute would probably be about 30 panels to 60 panels. Speed has been a very good friend of mine because it's helped my success, because they know that they can rely on me if they need a lot done, and like I can get 60 storyboard panels done in a day's work, right? Which is almost triple what is expected. It's about 20 panels. And so so it's a lot about speed and getting a lot down, so that we're able to generate discussions. So when you have narrative, the writers working with the world director, the cinematic director, all the other key players, the fact that they can come across and say, hey, this is what we want, and then I've learned probably the hard way that I never can go, guys, what are you doing? Don't do this, because I've done it so many times as a board artist. I know those standard pitfalls, but I've learned to stop saying that, because I think what they really want is they've got a vision, they want to see it, and they go, oh right, yeah, I guess that can't work. But it's great for them to see that and see it in themselves. So that's what I end up doing. I end up and I pitch it, right. So I've gotten pretty good at pitching stories, where I'll sit there and say, okay, well, so and so does this, and then I'll throw in some jokes and everything, and I go blah blah blah, and I'll make the voices and have a lot of fun. And it's kind of like where I think being a dungeon master for so many years and a game master has really kind of helped me to have that oratory ability, because like the last thing was on, which I can't say. And that's a big thing about Ubisoft also, is you never say what you're working on, only what you have worked on once it's been released. Is I've had the director like literally belly laughing at the way I would say things, and then just some of the. So the only kind of suggestions I would make would be silly, funny suggestions that I'm not being serious about, and so they appreciate that, because it just breaks the intensity and everything. But yeah, it draws this discussion where they say, "Oh, so it's going to feel like this and this." Yeah, you know what? The level designers aren't going to be happy about that because of that location, and so that's what I think the hallmark of the storyboarding will do, and so it is about a lot fast.
So it's almost like you may have already learned this lesson, but it's a way of you're kind of guiding them to learn it as well, because if they haven't seen that sort of an issue, you're being there enough that you can be like, I know this is going to kind of go this way, but here you're going to discover it yourself and what have you.
Yeah.
How much of a difference do you find between? So you tied it in really well there with how that experience probably plays into DMing. Do you find is there a mental shift for you between visual storytelling and more narrative or vocal storytelling, like what you get with a D&D setup? So are you, when you're going through it and doing it, is it something where you're using the visual side of your brain and you're picturing the whole thing first and then describing it afterwards, or like how does that work for you? Is there a process difference?
There's a few things. I think if I have enough time to prepare, I'm going to have a lot of visual aids. I'm going to draw them up and everything. If I don't have time to prepare, then yeah, that does become more of I guess an oratory experience where I'm trying to, and a lot of times I try to exploit the medium I'm using, if that makes sense. So if it's going to be a CSE idea or a theater of the mind, I'm really going to try to really punch up the audio, the things that people are saying, how they're saying it, and things of that nature when it comes down to it. So that the key bit, no matter whether it's visual, audio, or just scripted like prose when you're describing something. I also teach, right? And when I teach my students, I tell them about the whole show don't tell. And I always bring up watching a Yu-Gi-Oh episode where it's like, oh, you just got my trap card, and I'm gonna do this, and so that's like the epitome of I'm gonna tell you everything, right? And what people really enjoy, whether it's film, role playing, whatever it is when their imagination is stimulated, right? So that's hopefully the key to try to engage the players in an experience.
So you've obviously got a long time in this industry and have developed a very strong talent and bulk of work behind it. For those who haven't had that time, they haven't either put in the time to develop the skills or don't have the innate talent for it or what have you. What's your thoughts on when people, whether it's in gaming or in whatever, have started using more AI tools to try to supplement that? So like if they're trying to do something quickly and they, I need a concept for this creature that I'm doing in a game, and I go and type it into whatever AI tool of the day is popular. How does, because I find there's definitely a difference of opinion between those who are, in that industry and see it that way versus other folks. I was curious on how you view that.
Well, it's a massive can of worms. It's funny because I was never a writer, but of course I've been forced to write in the last few years. But and so there are times where I'll go to ChatGPT and just get a body down, but I will never go to ChatGPT for any of my more dare I say insightful ideas, because by doing so I'm also teaching ChatGPT, and then other people are going to exploit my insights. So it sounds a little greedy, I think, right? It sounds a little maybe, oh no, that's it. But there's certain things that I'm doing which I'm sure we'll discuss in this podcast. But there's certain things that I'm doing that I'd like to think are fairly innovative and refreshing. And so I'm hoping to be the first one out with them, and to think that if so on that side, on the side of the artistic bit, so my colleagues, both my daughter and my son-in-law, they're both in animation as well, and so they're up in arms over Picasso and all those other art version. Yet because I started my career in the late 80s, and as such I've seen 3D animation come into being. That is iterative AI. It's there. Photoshop's been doing it for decades. You can do a content fill. There's so much technology that is aiding us in our, whether it's motion, whatever the case is, right? And I've always been a proponent of, it doesn't matter what kind of art it is, visual, audio, written, acting. It's the creativity and the insight that's within us that I would like to think computers cannot replicate. So that's where it comes to it. Yeah.
So you view it more as a tool, and it's going to be
Yes.
used as good or as poorly as the person who's wielding the tool.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Let's jump over to Seas of Infinity. So
okay.
You and I got a chance to sit down and play this, like I said, a couple months ago. When I signed up for it at the con, I saw the name, and I had never heard of the game before, and I went, "Oh, Seas of Infinity! This is probably going to be, a ship sailing game. We're going to go on we're going to be pirates or something of the like." Tell me about the name and the genre that it actually is, and maybe give me an elevator pitch of what the game is.
Okay, sure. So every time I present and every time I go to these cons, I'm ready for that. I'm ready. Oh, it's probably gonna be pirates, or it's gonna, and um, you know, and I love the name so much that I don't want to change it to. I'm not that concerned that it will necessarily dissuade people, and it won't take much to realize. Okay, wait a second. So Seeds of Infinity. Like, so I of course I've in the past, I'd say 4 years, I've done a deep dive into Joseph Campbell. I listened to the Joseph Campbell Pathways podcast, some wonderful stuff, and I've learned a lot. And one of the things I've learned that's going right back to the times of Egypt, the early times before the pharaohs, the early kings, is that they already had something called the cosmic ocean. And the cosmic ocean definitely is talking about things that may nowadays we'll probably call astral travel, or the ethereal plane, or whatever the case is. But there's that side of it, and that's the seas I'm talking about. But it's also a double entendre, because what we have is, imagine an onion, which every layer of this onion is an entire cycle of a planet. So but they're planes, and so they are actually on top of each other on different frequencies as the idea. And so what you end up having is you have these infinite planes, but because we're seeing this as a globe, we have, of course, this ocean and these seas, and we in real life we have the prime meridian, somewhere around, I think, England, and in the Seas of Infinity, playing on ley lines, which again is a very Anglo bit, I think mostly Irish, if I remember correctly. But so it's called the ley meridian. So it's a ley meridian, and the idea is, as soon as you cross that meridian, you've gone into the next cycle of this plane. And so it's literally infinite. So if you're Christopher Columbus, you'll never find America. You'll just keep on going and going and going deeper and deeper in. So it creates this almost feeling of the same concept of space, in a way, of this infinite play on that. And of course, the idea is to play upon high level, higher prestige adventures where we could be shifting planes, and by doing so, we're literally going like maybe 1,000,000 miles away by doing so, and toying with it. So that's Seas of Infinity. And the elevator pitch, I if you remember from that day when we were playing, I said Dungeons and Dragons has 1d20, we got 2d20, right? And that's my me being really silly about it. The whole I guess for lack of a better word, the impetus behind it is, I've always appreciated the bell curve rolling dice. I've also appreciated the sound and the satisfaction of hearing dice click in your hand when you're rolling. So I always thought it was nicer to always roll, because for a long time we were rolling the 2d10, getting percentiles, and that was always so much fun. Percentiles mean that you have the equal chance of getting anything, and so what I wanted that bell curve, and I felt that 2d20 created a really nice bell curve that ultimately played back into what I wanted Seas of Infinity to be. As it's the idea is that you're playing. I picked the Iron Age. And of course, there's going to be a Venn diagram with a bit of a medieval feel here or there. But it's the Iron Age, and it's the Iron Age without a Messiah who basically dies for everybody. So basically, it's Iron Age without Christ. So that we have a lot more of that influence of the monotheistic cultures and how they play off on each other. So because of all that, in the different plays that I've read up about destiny, fate, karma, and such, there's an interesting view, which is just in the dictionary, that fate is usually something that the universe imposes upon us, whereas destiny is something that we are meant to manifest. And so that became the reason for the 2D20, because I love the idea of crits and fumbles, but I don't like it when it's so common. It's, it's like, okay, I'm gonna jump across that thing. It's an 8 foot. Okay, make a roll. Really? 8 feet? Oh my gosh! And I got like a 5% chance that I'm gonna fail. I'm gonna die and fall to my death. And it's such a right. And I think for players, I don't know if it's a fun thing. So I end up turning it into like this uber crit and uber fail, where it's now playing upon cosmic energies in the universe, where when you roll it, of course it's an uber crit, so if you're swinging a sword, you're really gonna hit hard, obviously, but you have also manifested your destiny if it's a destiny movement, and now all of a sudden you have a destiny score. And this destiny score, like I sent you just on its own a PDF trying to document how to play on Destiny and Fate, and it's a little involved, and I'm hoping that I'm able to illustrate it verbally enough that people get the idea. Oh, okay, so this is narrative based. This is about stories. It's like, okay, well, I just like destroyed this goblin. I am destined to be the doom of goblins. So every time now I come up against goblins, whatever my destiny score is, that's my little extra bonus against them. And then as I roll, that gets bigger and bigger and bigger, to the point where it's such a large score. And there's an interesting thing, and this is a Joseph Campbell concept, is the whole hero concept, is to be able to be the hero, is to go into the cave and then come out reborn. And so the one thing that is a little lackluster for me in D&D 5e is so hard to die.
See, that was, I think, one of the first things that turned me away from 5e as well, was just how many opportunities for healing or of death avoidance there was, and just given the way that the game, it's not even so much a mechanical side of the game, but just due to how it ends up getting played, you have we're going to take a rest now so that we have everything we could possibly need. There never seemed to be a depletion of resources of any great detail, given how the game was typically played. And when you mentioned the whole Fate and Destiny roles, it reminds me a lot of a game that I've been into right now that I'm messing around with is Dragonbane from Free League, and they've got kind of a similar idea of when you roll what would be like a critical success, they call it a dragon, and whenever you roll a critical failure, it's called a bane. A demon. Whenever you roll a critical failure, it's called a demon. Dragons and demons, and that's kind of the whole theme of the game, is that dragons and demons are opposed to each other. But
nice.
but yeah, I like the idea that not only is you're making the critical successes and failures are a little bit less common, or actually, and I think if you look at the percentages, way less common, because it's like it's like 0.25% or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it also has a longer term impact on you if you got that, which is kind of a neat mechanic. When you and I sat down to play, where were you at in the playtesting of the game at that point? Like, what was so how close to what you theorize will be a completed version of the game were you then versus now?
Oh, wow. Okay. Great question. So the big part about it is I haven't play tested campaign play yet at all. So I'll not bring that into it, even though I have a lot developed for that. I'd say about 75 to 80%. Yeah, it's pretty much there. I'm hoping by high summer to have the workbook complete. Yeah, so that's where I'm at. On the other side, when you and the others came, you were the highlight of my year. Like what? Like I was so taken back by the I mean, it was obvious that you all knew how to role play. I mean, everyone coming there knows that, but there was so much more to it. And the fact that, like, you as the leader, you didn't say to me, "Hey, so it says here on," no, you got it, and everyone. I was like, and until that adventure, until doing it with your group, no one else even read those. Like, no one else even played or leveraged any of that, right? So and I accepted it because, I'm realizing it gets a little bit more advanced when you get into those things. But yeah, it was such a treat. It was such a treat, and it's those things there that not only was I happy that you were all exploiting it, but it actually worked really well, and that was the first time it really got tested.
Well, the group that we played there, the four of us that were there at the table, this is probably, I think that was the second con, and between the fall one that had taken place in 2023 and then this one here in 2024 in the spring, we had played probably, I don't know, 5 to 6 games together. So the group all kind of knew each other, so that we were beyond the awkward phase of whenever you're sitting at a con table and you're just playing with people for the first time. So I think you got a group of folks that we were all comfortable, messing around and being silly with each other. So we didn't have the get to know you part of the con table of strangers. So you kind of got a group of folks that had played together a few times. I'm glad that it was good for you. It was fun for us as well. We had I went back before we sat down here and I grabbed my note, and I didn't make a ton of notes from the game, but it was just like the very first thing I have written down was what we talked about before about the genre. And I had it's a cosmic ocean, not pirates. That was the very first thing I had wrote down, just because I was like, yeah, keep this in mind right off the way. But yeah, we had a bunch of different cool creatures that were happening in there. I like the whole like caravan of water and that whole idea that we had going on of what we were trying to do and the little side missions. So that was really neat. We talked about how the core mechanic is a 2d20, but yeah, you wrap it around with a whole lot of modifiers over time as well. So where would you say, if you had to kind of describe the core mechanic in relation to other games that people may know, is there a game that you would closely link it to, or if not, where would you describe the crunch level on the game?
Crunch level. Yeah, I softened that a bit more. I was also at the fall one last year, and it was even crunchier back then. I am doing my best to bring that crunch level down. I'm going to call it a medium crunch level. It's not very light, but I've really brought down the +1s, +2s, +6s, but like all that, I really just brought it down to like 3, 5. So I'm keeping it in the Fibonacci number sequence thing. So I probably throw it in about a medium crunch level. I'm trying to get the basics. Basically, you look and okay, yeah, I know what to do. I'm working on my character sheet because, like, not just you, for the past, I'd say 2 years, every playtest I've done, they'd be like, where's that? With it? I think you got to work on your character sheet, Rui. And it's like, and it's a great example of, here I am, a storyboard artist, which is my job to clarify things, but it is such a different beast when you're dealing with graphics and interaction. So yeah, so that's I want to keep it light, but if I had to compare it to say comparing it to D&D, it's a cause effect system like just about everything else. With D&D, it works in modifiers the same way D&D does. It's the same thing, your pluses, right, to your die roll. It's not a system where the better armor someone has, the harder it is to hit them. It's the more they absorb damage. So I don't know if you've ever for me, I've had the pleasure. A lot of people really dislike the games of the original Marvel superhero game by TSR. It's so they had fixed damage. And what's nice about that, I think it's important to roll dice, but I don't think it's important to roll dice 6 times in a round. And so, and then that's something you probably noticed in the game. It's like, okay, make your die roll, and that was it, and everything else was considered and determined from there. And so, so I kind of say it's amalgam of the two.
When you're going through the game and you're trying to decide, like when you're going through the design process of the game and you're trying to decide which way you're going to take a mechanic and what the game is going to be core about, you hear a lot of people when they're describing D&D, they describe it as, because of it becoming from a wargaming route, they talk that D&D is all about combat, because if you pick up a rule book, 90% of that rule book is describing combat in some manner.
Yeah.
It is when you're going through the mechanics of the game, where do you think your percentage lies on this amount of what I'm having to write down into this rule book is dealing with combat versus any other aspect of the game?
I think it's I think when you're doing like a 4-hour adventure, I think you have to really lean into the combat side of it. So yeah, I agree. I call D&D segue to skirmishing. Right? Okay, you're gonna open the door. Okay, time to fight. Okay, and it's go, right, and looting treasure. So people really like that. It's a lot of fun. So I want to make sure I didn't take away from that, but I wanted to place more importance on narrative. I wanted to place more importance on the concept of a campaign, and that there's more to do than just go and do the fight. And everything kind of works in the same way. So I'm going to say 20% combat, but then you get a certain DM, which even works with Dungeons and Dragons. If they want, they can change this whatever game that is pretty much 75% combat. They can turn it into a 10% combat. They quickly can do that, and it's the same thing here where you can have the game master basically say, hey guys, well, let's have some fun. We're going to do a lot of fighting, and they can push that 20 right up to 90% if they want. But the rule base and the way it works is that there are many arenas to have these conflicts, that they don't have to be literally physical, like slugfest conflicts. Yeah. That's the hope.
So when did this idea come to you for this game, and if you're anything like myself or anybody else who I know who has decided to do a modification to a game, did this start off as a modification to a different game's rules, and you're like, okay, I took that as far as I can, now it's going to do my own thing, or was it always a brand new concept for you? How long has this been noodling around before it started actually making its way onto paper?
Oh, well, we're going to go back 30 years. So in the 90s, it started. And what I did was I first took the Marvel game and I turned it into a fantasy-based game. So, you weren't necessarily superheroes, but because I had a magic system, I had all this stuff, we did that. And that was quite successful. We had fun with it. And then I grabbed Top Secret SI. And I really liked the way it worked and did the same thing. Say, hey, let's make this into a fantasy-based game, and that ran for a bit. I even have good friends of mine that they actually took that and ran with it even further. But one of the things that I did relatively quick was I came up with this concept called superficial, critical, and mortal. So I got rid of the way the Top Secret SI did their damage, and basically according to your attributes, you would have these 4 levels of damage you could take. The superficial would be nothing too concerning. Critical would mean you're being wounded. Mortal, a mortal wound. And so that went for a while, and things were great. Yet I was still feeling a little bit of this, and so I got to a point I'd say in the late 90s, where here we are, we're rolling to hit, we've hit, and now we're going to do damage, and we've got this variable damage, but then we've got this fixed armor, and I felt that was starting. So then it unraveled everything, and then that's when basically I just said from the ground up, and this game here is not from anything else, but that happened about 5-6 years ago. And that's because I have 2 boxes full of pitches and ideas, and none of them ever happened, including this game. And I said, okay, Rui, you're in your 50s now, like get something done. And that's what this has been now. This is me getting this one done. Yeah.
So this is a push to, it's easy to start a project. It's really hard to finish one. So this is we're going to sit down and get this project at the door type thing for you. When you're going through the design and iteration process, and you test something, or you come up with an idea, do you have like a core group that's gone through several different iterations of this game that you're bouncing it off of, or is this a lot of like trying to find different groups from all over the place to get it in front of? Like, how is your normal design process going? So you wake up this week and you've been noodling out a problem or something that was bothering you, and you get to the weekend. Who is getting to be the guinea pig that's going to first see if this plan passes a punch to the nose or not?
So I have a core group, and there's 3 of us that know each other like 4 decades. So we've known each other since elementary school, and this one was in junior high. For I'd say the first 3 years, it was all them and some new guys, and we would get together and go through it. And then about 2 years ago, we did the last one, and then I started branching out to get other sensibilities to see what they would think of the game. And then I don't want to call it a falling out, but basically it actually happened last at Phantasm. Like, guys, come, let's go to Phantasm. I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna test my game. And they're all like, and none of them actually supported me on that. So it was a kind of a point where I realized, okay, I really want to go with this. It looks like, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to move on without them, type of thing. Except for this one guy that he was actually there when you played too, Alex. He supported me then, and God bless him, and I'm so happy and thankful for that. And so that's where we're at now. So now it's all new play testing. This Saturday, I'm going to a local game store, and I'm going to be play testing with complete strangers. I have another one. I'll be going up into Barrie, and I've been arranging a bunch of people up there to play test it. So I have that one, and then I have a group of colleagues from college that I got together lately, and they're interested in trying it out. So now I want to do that, and I want to actually try to get as many different people as possible, because I want to kind of spread the word, right? So yeah.
So how have you found the gaming scene in, let's call it the Greater Toronto area, for those who may not be familiar with our area around us, but for like, if we take the city of Toronto as the center and you spread it out an hour or two each direction, is kind of the area that we were talking about there a moment ago. What do you find? How would you categorize or describe the gaming scene around here?
Oh my gosh, yeah. That's a good question. So shame on me, but for years it was just my gaming group. We were like, we had our secret team, our coven, that we would get together, and we barely would branch out. But of course, with myself, I would, especially because of 40K, I would go and branch out. Magic the Gathering, I go and branch out. So there were things that I would do. When it came to role playing, it's like we had this like special like secret thing that we just really enjoyed. So I didn't get into it much. Like, I didn't go to Breakout Con again. So and ironically, I'm trying to break out of that, and that's why I did go to Peterborough. With all that said, I I I think it's great. I just can't verbalize um, my opinion of, say, the Toronto itself, because I haven't really played with other people much. But out there at Phantasm, wow, what a breath of fresh air for me, because I was so used to this group that I play with, and then like you guys, right? When you guys were playing, I was like, oh my gosh, it was like, oh, angels were singing for me. It really was, because and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but that this group that I did play for years are highly critical and cynical and egotistical. So to be able to actually go out and realize, oh wait, other people will actually can kind of see what I'm trying to do here. Yeah. So
yeah, maybe sometimes it's just a fresh set of eyes. If you've seen something for a long while, I think you can become jaded to it, or take it for granted, or what have you. So having somebody see it for the first time maybe is there's definitely a value in there. So your plan is to get the project done, get it to a completion state, and we said you're a good percentage of the way along. Is the plan, once you get it to a certain point, to start like a Kickstarter or crowdfunding, or is it going to be something that you complete on your own and then just publish it straight out from there?
I'm considering Kickstarter. Yeah, I know some people that have gone that route. I might even, there's actually on one of your podcasts where I can't remember the gentleman's name, but they used someone that's what they did. They knew how to really make the Kickstarter really hit with a bang. So I'm maybe looking into that. I'm going to be doing my own animatic to try to impress people, and because I am on the art side and I have some fellow artists, I'm going to try to really pollute the game with a lot of artwork. It's all going to be black and white, and I'm going with that what do they call it, the old school Renaissance look, right?
Give it an old school black and white pencil vibe type idea.
Yeah. So and if you go on my website, you can see some the drawings. One of my real nice ones was taken off, so I had to talk to the person that's managing my website. But I did this Outlander, which I want to be the gold standard for like a lot of the stuff that I want to put on there. But so that's the idea. Try Kickstarter and see what that does.
And so when anytime I see somebody going into a Kickstarter for the first time and you see them go through, would your plan for this be I'm going to get the game out and the game is what I'm focusing on, or are you planning to kind of have a bunch of like the stretch goals and everything else like that on the first go through, or how would you what obviously that's in the future, that's a future thing for you, but is there a thought that you've had on it, or how you would envision it?
Yeah, there's a big one. So this workbook that I'm completing is exactly that. It's a workbook. So it's not necessarily meant to be something that for the public specifically, because this is just the core of everything. And then of course it would be the rule book, which people can get, and it will help explain things and such, right? But one of the things that I want to do is, of course, I want to do the rule book, but for like it's a higher sponsorship, I'd say, hey, you can get a copy of the workbook. Also, D&D will have races, character classes, and things of that nature right in the player's handbook, as an example. And so I've been deliberating this for probably about a year and a half now, but I think I finally come to the idea of what I want to do is, because again, the Joseph Campbell bit, I've actually created for lack of a better word, the realm, the continent that this is all going to happen on. And everything is based on specific realms and regions. So there will be Alana is one of the realms, and connected to other realms. Like it's a large continent, but in the case of that, there's histories of the tribes that formed certain groups and created things, just like going from the Bronze Age to the Iron Age, how these things happen. And by doing so, when you get this book, it'll have the map, it'll have the areas. I want it to have a brief history, but then all the different, so the classes will actually just be the people and the professions and the way they do things. So there was a tribe, the Demetrians, and the Demetrians were a very proud tribe that were annexed by Alana. So there is no more Demetria necessarily, but now the Demetrian mercenaries are one of the most effective mercenaries. And so then you've got the stats and the template for being a Demetrian mercenary. And so basically every region, every group of people, and as well every species, right? Like dwarves and elfin, they will have their the realms are from the race they are versus the species, and then everything will come from there. So the magic items, the the spells, if there are spells, if there are actual schools, because there could be spells in the adventure and such, but those spells will be specific for what's going on, as opposed to like established schools or whatever the case may be, right? Prayers and things of that nature. So that's the plan. So that's going to be those sprints. Is going to be every gazetteer that encompasses that region and what it needs.
You actually kind of bring up a thought in my head, is that there seems to be almost two different approaches I see commonly in games, and you've got some games where they focus on the game first and try to make it so it's generic to almost any sort of a setting, and then there's games like what it sounds like what you're describing, where the setting is so integral to the game, because it's informed so much of what you've decided to build for a mechanic or build for lore, that the lore is equally as important as the game is, almost as on there. And so do you think it's going to be something where, because the lore and the background is so important, do you think it'll be easy or difficult for somebody to come in and run an adventure without having the same background into the lore that you do? Because obviously you've had this in your head for a long while. But if somebody's going to sit down for the first time and try to run a game of this, how much of that lore do they need to know, or will be something that that can kind of be hand waved a little bit, and they can just go grab, an adventure that maybe came from a different game or just a scenario they have in their head, and be able to run it through?
Yeah. Well, I would like to think that, I guess because it's the Seas of Infinity, literally could be a realm. It could be wherever you want, right?
Any plane that you could think of, yeah.
Yeah. And then they can just take a look and go, okay, you know what? I get what he's doing here. This is just your standard guard. And so in where I'm going to go, I want people to be really I want it to be gritty. So basically you're starting off, you're a town guard. You're starting off, you're a militia and a farmer. And so there will be enough there as examples for them to see. And then they can go into these different gazetteers, and that's where the creatures are. And right, so yeah, I'd like to think the more they want to say, I want to make this mine, so that I want to tell my own story, then yeah, it should hopefully the idea is they will have everything, and that's probably where that workbook is better, because that's where you're going to be, that's where the spell system is, where you would actually put together the spells, and that's where all of those things that D&D doesn't do, a lot of different games don't do, is how did they actually come to that spell? Well, this game literally, there's a chart to say, okay, you want to do this, and this, and this. This is what it can do. So this is what it's going to take, and this is how much the caster's going to need to manifest this magic, right? And so it's all going to be figured out, so that It's a little less to interpretation, and yet, of course, like what people love doing is making their own rules, and that's always up to them. But hopefully, this is what this will give. Yeah.
Earlier when we were talking, you had mentioned that when we were talking about AI and ChatGPT, and you were talking about giving it, some of the creative stuff that you're doing, and you said you really wanted to kind of hold close the innovations that you've come in with this game. What do you think is the biggest innovation that, like, when you look at it and you're like, okay, I got something here. What's the biggest innovation or a new thing that you haven't really seen in another game, or even if you have seen it in another game, they didn't do it quite the way that you would have wanted to see it done? So what would you say is the biggest crowning innovation for this game?
Yeah, so it started off being the hit point system, because it works on a stamina base buffer that once it gets back beyond there, you become wounded and you get hurt. And so I'm quite happy. I had got a lot of comments from that last con, where some people felt it was a little crunchy, a little too complicated. Other people wanted more. They wanted armor damage. They wanted it, so it was really neat. But I think it may come down to manifest. So the manifest score, which was inspired by Marvel's Karma, because in Marvel you use karma to better your role, and that's what manifest is doing. But one of the things that would happen a lot when we would play Marvel is they would just say, no, I'm going to make it a red. And it's like, okay, I'm going to spend 200 karma points or whatever. They were going to just spend a ridiculous amount because they wanted to make it happen. And it's nice in one way, yet it can get abused really quick. So when the same concept of the Fibonacci sequence being used for manifest, so that if your manifest is 18, that means that you can at any one time spend 5 manifest, was a nice way to play on it. And there was a limit. You could only do that a few times, and then and it was nice again watching you guys play, because I remember one point and I said, well, you want to use manifest? Well, I don't know, I'm getting kind of low. We're still going to get this thing. So what it does is it creates a game on its own. It becomes its own currency for the game, and so I'm really happy. And I think the reaction I'm getting, even from last fall, what a lot of people like is that you have this manifest, but then if you are a priest with divine powers, or a wizard with arcane powers, whatever it is, you use manifest to manifest that cosmic energy. And so people really like that. So I think it's manifest, and it's basically 0.25% chance of getting your destiny, right? I think that's the hallmark of the game. And then I want to create engaging adventures and story adventures that is going to bring it bookended, bring it together. Yeah.
In most games, especially with fantasy games, what have you, people try to get a common vision of what's going on, or a common work of previous art that you can kind of draw from inspiration. And looking in your background, I can see different small things of nerdom that is awesome, that's behind you. If you had to build similar to what D&D has in terms of like an Appendix N or something, what is the 1 or 2 things that you think somebody should read or be versed in before sitting down to play at least the game the way that you would run it, to have a good vibe of something? What's a source of inspiration somebody should go and look at, so they're coming in with the right mindset to the game?
Yeah, I guess this is bias, but it's just basically Joseph Campbell's works. Problem is I have to have a dictionary whenever I read his stuff. But and the one probably of all these things back there should be one called, no, it's upstairs because I'm in the middle of reading it. It's Myths to Live By. So myths to, there's the hero of 1,000 faces, or sorry, the gods, the masks of God. Hero of the Thousand Faces, the hero's journey is probably everyone needs to. Again, right? Needs. Oh, please, needs. But anyways, I think that's the for me. That's the book. That's the book because we're role playing. We're on a journey. It's all about this journey, and it's about mythology. But when you really start diving deep into Joseph Campbell, it's also about psychology, and it's about what it is to be a human condition and such. So yeah, I would say read that, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful. It's actually taking me to the level of, again, the adventure that you guys played, where I'm trying to create every adventure, whether it's a one-shot takeaway or whether it becomes a campaign, is I want it to be a mythology. I really want it to have that feeling of why it is these things have happened, why it is that this has come to pass, and now no one wears iron bands around their wrists anymore. Now they wear wedding rings, right? And this is the story of it. And so, trying to do a Flight of Icarus experience every time. Yeah.
Have you looked into doing any of the playtesting via like online, whether it be through like a video call like what we're doing, or via VTT or anything like that, to try to get playtesting from outside of our immediate area? Have you done any of the online gaming?
That's a great idea. I hadn't even thought of that. I wouldn't even know where to start to make that a thing, because yeah, that would be wonderful, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
I never thought of that.
Well, you and I can have an offline chat about that if you want. I can give you some places that you can use to do that. But if folks wanted to get in touch with you, if they're hearing this and they're like, hey, I want to know more about the game, if they want to potentially try playing something online with you or something like that, how do they get in touch with you? Where do they go to find more information about the game? What have you?
Okay, well, I'm working on it. It's almost there. It's up though for people. It's www.seasofinfinity.com. And I'm hoping within the month to have it going. I am doing a constant blog. I'm in the middle of trying to get a newsletter going with it, but they can definitely go there and join up and start throwing me questions or insults or whatever they want. Yeah.
More questions. Nobody likes insults.
Let's
go with questions. All right. So before we wrap up, a question I generally ask everybody at the end of a conversation, because I've got notes that I might have written down for things I want to bring up during a talk, but I'm infallible. I will miss things. Is there something that I should have asked you about either yourself or the game or the process that I didn't, that you think should be out here so people hear it? Is there something that I didn't bring up that you think I really should have, or that you were hoping I would have, to let everybody know?
I think I really enjoyed your questions. I came into it just with an open mind, waiting to hear the questions and answer them. So I don't think so. If there's anything I want to say, I do have a lot of fun with this game system I'm doing, and I think at the end that's really important to me. It's a question that people have asked and stumped others with other games, whether it's video games or whatever. It's like, is it fun?
Yeah, I think that can be a difficult question for a creator to answer, because I've got friends who I've been a video game nerd my entire life, but I've got friends who took that and decided to go enter the industry, and almost everybody who enters the industry, their first is in playtesting, what have you, before they go off to try to live their dream as a developer. And I remember talking to friends back in college that were doing playtesting for various companies at that point in time. And you'd be like, hey, that's awesome. You're working for a company XYZ. You guys you put out this game. That was amazing. And they're like, yeah, it's just not fun. You think that sounds like it's amazing, but when you're doing it every day and you're seeing you're seeing how the sausage is made on it every time, it can quickly lose its fun. So if you're able to go through the creative process on it, and you're still coming out on the other end of it, and it's enjoyable and it's fun, and you're not getting, I guess, I don't want to say jaded, but if you're not getting taking it for granted, so to speak, I think that's a huge boon and compliment to what you're able to put out. If it's still something that you're like, yeah, this is awesome. I'm excited about it and going that way.
Thanks. I you know what? I really am. I'm really excited about this, and I do think I have something. I do think I have something that is different enough from things that are out there, but hopefully not just to be different, but actually bring forth. Because again, you and everyone else that April, they all had fun. It was a fun system, and so that's what I'm like. One eye wide open. He's not making it. Yes, that's what I want. I want to hear. Hey, this is fun. This is engaging. Yeah. So.
Excellent. Well, thanks for coming on and chatting with me. I hope folks, learn something from this, and they're going to run over and start hounding you to get the project done. And maybe this will get extra people coming in saying, you said you were going to have this finished. Where is it, Rui? And go from there and put some pressure on you to get the project completed. But yeah, thanks so much for coming on and chatting with me.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, folks, that's going to wrap up this episode of the Red Caps podcast. I hope you enjoyed, you learned something, and that you are eager to come back for more. www.theredcaps.net has all the links to all the ways to contact me, and I would love to hear from you. Thank you ever so much for listening. And remember, never let your caps dry out. Stay safe, have fun. We'll talk again soon. Take care.